Hi there, you're listening to Unnatural Selection, the show about newsy type stuff and things. My name is George.
My name is Tom.
And my name is Adam.
And with our powers combined, we are Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com.
The Monday night, which is different. Well, blast from the past for us. We used to do Monday nights.
And
they have a different energy now that we're all in our mid-30s.
I think
they definitely do.
Really bringing that hot Monday night energy that everyone loves.
Mm-hmm. It's when everyone's at their best.
You've just been at work for a full day. George has got, a family and a baby that needs to settle. And what he really wants to do is yell about global politics at the top of his lungs on a Monday night. It's delicious.
Yeah, we do have really love it.
They really love it. But we do have some good stories this week. We do have a couple of interesting things.
Well,
and
I mean, they're all terrible, but in terms of the net good from most of them is in the floor.
Bad. Bad for society, we all agree. But great for ha-has. So
ha-has. Do they spark joy, perhaps? Maybe not.
Maria Kondo would keep all of these stories.
Ha-has will not be honoured.
I learned via a satirical news site social media post this week that apparently gas is being imported into Australia.
Not yet.
Yeah, don't you love it when the satire news reports actual news?
I saw the Batuta Advocate and it was like, basically, why the fucking fuck is Australia, who exports most of the gas in the world, setting up terminals to import gas? How does that make any fucking sense whatsoever? Yep. And I was like, that feels too angry to be not true. So I looked it up and sure enough, it was true.
Yeah.
It's interesting because there's a whole bunch of reasons. So let's break it down, guys. Let's get into it. Why would Australia set up gas? Or what do we mean by we're importing gas? We're not importing gas yet. We're aiming to potentially import gas in 2026. And that is particularly...
Ages away.
Ages away. It's so far in the future. So Twiggy Forrest has set up a company and they've basically bought out a former coal port, New South Wales, to convert it to a gas import facility. And what they would do is they would basically dock a big LNG ship up to it. And that would be used to, de-liquefy, the liquid form of natural gas back into gas, and then it can be transported back to different parts of Australia where it needs to be. Mm-hmm. And he's betting on this because the stockpiles in the southeast of the country are apparently running out. So because of, for a number of reasons, and one of them being towards renewables.
Yeah, is one of them rapacious global capitalism, as it always is?
Well, but rapacious global capitalism and what you might call poor government planning. So the southeast states, particularly Victoria, mostly Victoria, New South Wales, are very heavily reliant on gas during the wintertime in particular, right? In June of this year, we almost ran out of gas. And what's happening is there's a major facility down in, I think it's, I'm going to say Lonsdale. I may have just made that suburb up, but it starts with an L in Victoria. And the stockpiles and the what would you call the gas fields in that area, the reserves is the word that keeps getting thrown around, they're running out. And so they're looking, there's a graph here in this article, which we'll post up in the show notes, but by 2026, those reserves are going to start dropping. Now, because of where the pipelines are and the supply networks, that is the main facility that does all of Victoria and New South Wales. There are facilities in Western Australia and Queensland, and there's only like one pipeline that goes from Queensland to New South Wales. I don't know if it even goes to Victoria, and there is nothing from Western Australia back across. So Western Australia may as well be its own fucking country, as far as we're concerned.
I mean, I've said that for many years, that Western Australia may as well be its own fucking country. That's a statement that's evergreen.
So there's that, right? In terms of the points in which you can get gas to Victoria and New South Wales, and we're still heavily reliant on it, both from a residential point of view as well as a industrial point of view, commercial point of view, we're still heavily reliant on gas. Gas is seen as the way to somehow lower emissions while still needing to have supply side things for like power generation. It's about half as dirty as coal in terms of the emissions. It's still not great, but it's better than coal. The government's policy is they want to try and leverage the gas network to provide that stopgap until we somehow work out how to even out supply in the 2030s somewhere.
I just wonder though, to what extent does this acknowledge the fact that there's an electrification kind of transformation happening across the country?
Well,
it's the amount of gas output that we're going to be able to generate domestically is going to decline over years. And yes, this is a very scary looking graph. And look, as an MBA, I love
graph goes down and to the right.
Graph goes down and to the right. Immediate panic attack, right? Graph only should go up and to the right, as we know. Money go up, but surely, this doesn't take into account the fact that our consumption habits are really changing pretty drastically with regard to electricity in the form of electric vehicles and electric stovetops and solar panels and all that sort of stuff, as well as so our consumption is changing, and surely the points of generation are changing. A lot of people are getting rooftop solar and not using gas in the same way. I can't imagine that our gas needs in 2033 are going to be anywhere near what they are now, right?
No, but in 2027 to 2030, we're not electrifying fast enough. There is going to be a bit where we've lowered. So, and to be clear, gas demand is dropping. It's just not dropping fast enough. We should have done this.
The supply is
as with all of the renewal stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
Whenever we bring up dropping.
Yeah, whenever we bring up energy policy, it always comes down to we should have done this 30 years ago.
Yeah, we should have done this 30 years ago. Someone should have built some more pipelines or something. If you liked gas, maybe we should have, plugged some pipelines around. So basically, and then the other aspect we spoke about, of course, is that the Western Australian stuff is that's all reserved for contracts in different parts of the world. Queensland's shit's all going out somewhere.
I don't know why though we can't reserve a certain amount of Western Australia does this on a state basis, from what I understand, reserve a portion of their domestic production capacity of natural gas for domestic consumption. 15% of all the gas generated or that comes out of the ground has to go into domestic supply. And we solved our supply demand crisis. I
guess the thing being is you could do that, but then how do you get the gas from Queensland and Western Australia and South Australia, wherever it may be,
I guess
into the states that need it?
You're still shipping it, right?
So what they're talking about here, this import facility isn't necessarily even to import it from overseas, although you potentially may well do, depending on where gas is cheapest. You may well just be using it to get gas from Western Australia
to Eastern Australia,
to Eastern Australia, because that's cheaper in the short term than building a big fuck off pipeline.
What it feels like though is I don't know if you guys have ever done any base building games like Rust or one of those things where it's Age of Empires is a pretty good example of this, where it's you're building a wall behind the existing wall that the army is plowing through just to buy you some time before the army storms through your home base. It's I'm just building
the Tom Heath strategy is what I call that.
the oh shit strategy, where it's just you're literally just building another wall behind your existing crumbling wall in order to buy you just a little more time. Whereas really you should have been planning a long time ago to build up your army so that doesn't happen in the first place, right?
Yeah, Australian energy policy actually really does feel like me playing Age of Empires. Me playing that game is always a sudden realization. No matter how many times I've done it, I've played many games with you guys. I used to play it in my youth. But my God, every single time I have the thought just appears in the back of my head, you should have been building your economy, asshole. When fucking, someone who, because of the way Age of Empires works, is 1,000 years in the future from me and has munitions, whilst I'm a bunch of moron farmers with sticks and axes, just having all our shit pushed in, and going, I should have focused on my economy instead of, I don't know, just jerking myself off on a farm. I
And
guess
it's-
like all
and,
these guys.
And instead of it being
And-
Tom Heath that said those words, it should be the Australian government.
Yeah.
or the state of Victoria in this case. Now, look, does the green energy transformation have something to answer for in terms of the lack of approvals in new gas projects? Maybe, but we shouldn't be greenlighting shitloads of gas projects either.
I would argue that international flows of capital have more to do with whether people are investing in fossil fuel projects. I think that is more of a factor in large international conglomerates investing. If they don't view it as a long-term sustainable business opportunity, these investment funds, they're not going to do it. It's hardly got to do with it, a couple of greenies chaining themselves up against the fence. I'm sorry, BlackRock doesn't give a shit about that. What they're looking at is future revenue projections and how much ROI they're going to get from this investment. And if that graph goes down and to the right, as opposed to up and to the right, well, they're not going to put money in because they need to get their squillions of dollars back, right? So that has more to do with the future of fossil. I remember there was a whole thing a couple of years ago about how, I think it was before the last election cycle, Peter Dutton was saying we're going to build a bunch of gas plants, and the private industry.
Scott Morrison.
Was it Scott Morrison?
Oh, Scott Morrison. He's good with the gas-led recovery.
Gas-led recovery, and they're going to say,
yes.
If the gas companies don't want to build these gas plants, we're going to make them, or we're going to build them ourselves. And everyone was like, how's that going to work? That had to explain. And they were like, yeah, trust us.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
I do remember.
It's if private industry wanted to build gas plants, they would, if there was an ROI, if there was a return on investment for them, and they would make a bunch of money doing it, then they would have done it. The reason they're not doing it is because
it's fucking expensive.
It's because it's really expensive, and they're not going to get their money back.
This project, this port that they're building or going to convert, in New South Wales, the project is going to cost Squadron, which is the company. It's a and this, to be clear, this isn't actually government policy. This is a private venture. Let's be very clear about this. The government hasn't said we're going to fund this. Twiggy Forrest has said, I reckon we're going to need import facilities and I'm going to build it. And it's going to cost him and his company $1 billion to do so. So now they're looking at the government going, if this doesn't play out, if we don't, if we bet on the wrong horse here somehow, because it is a bit of a gamble, would the taxpayer cover us? And they're having, quote, conversations with levels of government at this stage. And I do remember, at the end of at the end of lockdown, so when we opened up roughly, Scott Morrison was like, we're going to do hydrogen, and but we can't do hydrogen right away. We're going to do gas, and we can use the same facilities for gas to go to hydrogen. And it was, at the time, I was like, okay, we can. I guess it's good thinking. They'd heavily been lobbied by various parties. To get this policy out.
When you put together a panel to figure out how we're going to economically recover from COVID, and you populate it almost entirely with executives from the gas industry, please do not be surprised when their suggestion for recovering the Australian economy says gas-led recovery.
Yeah.
But in terms of what actually happened from that, I don't know. I haven't heard of any new gas major facilities being commissioned. I mean, maybe there are. Maybe it's in Queensland.
That's what happens when you get a bunch of
coastal scum breeding wanker.
That's what happens when you get a bunch of gas executives in a room. If you got a bunch of cobblers in a room, they'd say it was going to be a shoe-led recovery. Every hammer looks like every nail looks like a nail when you're a hammer.
You had to say every nail looks like a hammer.
Yeah, you know what I mean. I'm tired. I'm so tired. Leave me alone.
But what's interesting as well is the Victorian government. So one of the state chiefly with the biggest problem with all this has said pretty much that they're not going to greenlight any further, gas fields or major gas infrastructure, and that they're not going to change policy on it. It's just going to be a case of if it stacks up under current legislation, then that would be fine. But they're not going to go out of their way to sort of start harvesting Western Port, for instance, for all its natural resources. So it's an interesting problem, and it's one of those things where, just like Australia's oil reserves, it's like, shouldn't we have been thinking strategically about this 40 years ago? And turns out the Howard era of she'll be right, how good's small business wasn't so good for massive infrastructure projects.
Would you like to privatize something?
Yeah.
Hi,
yes.
Hi, it's John Howard. Would you like to privatize something?
It turns out that didn't do so well. We lost probably like 15 years worth of potential in terms of creating new infrastructure projects.
Cool.
So yeah, fun times. But yeah, it's interesting where it's like we want a green future, and we're currently wasting heaps of renewable energy because there's no way to store it. Like we generate heaps of it during the day, and it all just gets sort of pissed off into the wind
Through rooftop solar and things.
Yeah, exactly. And like, so we're getting better, but we're just not going fast enough. And at the same time, so to be able to like stop people freezing to death in June in the southeastern states, we have to like just suck it up and I guess burn more shit.
It's so funny though, because from what I understand, when we were growing up, everyone was installing gas heating because gas was so much cheaper than electricity. Like that was the state of play back then. And now it's kind of like, it's almost like, well, why would you have gas heating? To the extent to which when we were putting in these reverse cycle air conditioners at our home, there was a subsidy from the government for us to basically remove the gas heating. It's like, okay, well, if you've got electric heating and you remove your gas heating, you take it out, you don't use it anymore, then we'll give you a rebate of whatever it was, $1,400. So, I mean, obviously that's to do with availability as well as like of gas, as well as things like, you know, switch to renewable energy and electrification. But it's just crazy to think about in one generation, in 20 years, how much that dynamic has changed, where it was like putting gas heating, it's basically like free heating, free money, you can't lose. And then a generation, less than a generation later, the government's like, we will give you money to please stop using that.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
Knock, knock, asbestos, is that you? Let's all use this thing. Let's stop using this thing.
Hey, buddy.
I don't know. Should the government cover the loss, potential loss from this investment?
From Twiggy Forest doing this specifically.
Hi, George Tsipos, Free Market Gazette here. No, absolutely not.
Yeah, it's a real bold ask of them to be like
renowned socialist Andrew Twiggy Forrest, billionaire socialist.
Twiggy Forrest is one of the better billionaires, I would argue, compared to some of the other
ones. Oh, look, it's
but...
Adam. Oh, look at his boots. Oh,
you know what? Actually, the question I would want to know before I think I would even consider supporting the government. Considering the government considering bailing him out in any of this sort of sense. I'd like to know, because as we say, Australian taxpayers is the Australian taxpayer willing to do the thing? I'd like to know how much of that tax he has paid. If he is an Australian taxpayer, maybe I'll think about it.
No, the shell companies Mauritius are doing very well.
Rather than
is Australian gas, Australian gas giant Twiggy Forest based in Dublin? Are they based in a sweet tax haven of Ireland?
I no. My impulse is to say no. The Australian taxpayer should not be on the hook for, the big swings of a private billionaire. That seems wrong on the face of it. But surely, like, if we put $1 billion into investing into, electrical storage or preparing, this is what I don't understand is where are the initiatives? Like, we talked about that rebate to get rid of the gas heater and stuff. And I know there are solar rebates and things like that on a state level for you to get, solar put on your house. But I kind of feel like for the amount of money that we spend subsidizing fossil fuels, if we just took that money and then put it into electrification, we could have most of Australia much further along this path in the space of a couple of years, which would negate, you know what I mean? We know that electricity is the future. We're not going to be running gas stoves in 50 years, right? It's just not going to happen. So given that we know that that's where things are going, why aren't we just plowing all of our resources into getting us there sooner? It just kind of doesn't make sense to me. It's like they're building the second wall behind the wall thing. It's like, well, why are we spending money building this thing for a port, which is at best a stopgap measure for something that we want to do away with entirely anyway? It just doesn't seem rational to me.
Maybe for the winter, they should just like bulk supply us all some sweet gaming PCs because those things act as space heaters.
Yeah, you get a 3080. That thing runs hot, let me tell you.
Yeah, you could just pump so much power into one of those bad boys, and you're generating like 100 C of heat.
You can play Baldur's Gate 3 and heat your studio apartment, and that honestly, that's how most bachelors get heating.
I don't need a heater here in this room, thanks to mine. Great.
What I guess the only thing being is that just Adam Doreen keeping it real talk is that if we suddenly wean off gas and then put all our chips into the electricity basket without building a better electrical grid, then we end up back at the same point.
Sure, no, but like all of this
you can't have the lights on.
All of this is predicated on a functional electrical grid. Like, believe it or not, that's table stakes for a big boy country.
Yeah. And also, it is much easier. I'm assuming it's much easier to build a whole bunch of power lines from WA to over here than it is to build a pipeline.
I would have to assume.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean,
easier.
Because the thing is with electricity, with the distance, like the longer you have a cable going with copper, for instance, the less efficient it is. So,
but
I don't know.
I did hear about a proposal from Mike Cannon Brooks, where they're wanting to set up a solar farm somewhere in, I guess, Queensland, and run it to Singapore and sell the renewable energy that we generate here in Australia in Singapore. Yeah, I heard about that. I was like, could that possibly work?
Ship it across in batteries, maybe that'd be
no, like an underground, like an undersea, like fiber optic cable, and run it to Singapore.
Similar to how the internet links everywhere, like those hyperspeed fiber optic cable. Can they transfer that kind of power? Oh, okay.
I don't think fiber optics can do power.
Well, I don't know if it was fiber optic per se. Maybe I'm making that up, but like running some sort of cable from Australia to Singapore in order to supply them with renewable energy. I was like, well, if we can do that to other countries, why can't we do that to our own country? Like, if you look at Australia, there's this big spot in the middle, which is real red and like drenched in sun.
It's very hot.
It's real hot. It's like a famously hot, sunny country right in the middle there. And I kind of feel like we could do that to us rather than Singapore, but neither here nor there.
But George, Western Australia, it's its own fucking country. So
Western Australia really is the Texas of Australia, isn't it?
I've never been
just
to
half willing to secede at all points, like just willing to bite, sort of cut off its nose to spite its face. Like, they're like, we bring all the mining, we bring the goods, and if you take our hands off our fucking GST, you fucking freeloaders, get out here, get your hands off our fucking GST. Joe Rogan's hanging out there. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah,
indeed.
Speaking of bald men.
Bald men and people hanging out. The CFMEU?
I was going to go send it to David Pocock, but we can do
there. CFMEU then. Well, CFMEU, just an update. We said last week that after the massive protests, felt like there's probably a High Court challenge coming the Australian government's way, and turns out that is what's happening. Just to been living under a rock, CFMEU were forced into administration by the Australian government through legislation. Various union members and former CFMEU leaders not very happy about that. I believe it's infringement on their rights to association and a few other different things, and it's unconstitutional, and so they're taking it to the High Court. That's pretty much all the news. They've got a GoFundMe page, if you're so inclined, which the fact you have to have a GoFundMe page for a class action, sort of a High Court challenge rather, not a class action, a High Court challenge, makes me think that you're not being bankrolled by squillions of money, but the Australian government, Anthony Albanese, has said that we were prepared for this. We thought that they'd lodge a High Court challenge.
Then why?
I guess we knew what we were doing was dodgy.
Yeah. So then why'd you do it?
Yeah, maybe what we were doing was constitutionally sketchy.
That's exactly what he basically inadvertently admitted, I think, Tom.
But yeah, I don't know. Like, obviously,
sketchy.
Believe it or not, none of us here on the Unnatural Selection Podcast are constitutional scholars, but it does seem like it does It does seem like it might be unconstitutional, right?
Like put it this way: if Vladimir Putin did it, would it be good? Considered a good thing? I think we'd all say probably not.
Yeah, it's again. We spoke about this at length last week, but yeah, it's really the matter of doing this, like just straight up dissolving them, rather than if you have evidence pursuing that.
Yeah, we
Like,
have courts, like, you know,
you
know, bribery and corruption, and those are things which can be prosecuted.
File a police report.
Yeah, file a police report, get some people arrested. Like those are already illegal things. So if that is taking place, if there is violence and intimidation that's being used, like to blackmail people, like those things are already crimes that should be prosecuted. I just don't understand from a political standpoint.
Yeah.
Or
It really just feels like they just wanted to avoid a bad news cycle, and so they're like, yeah, that's great, let's throw the union under the bus, because they didn't want to get attacked from the right by Peter Dutton. It really just feels like that's as complicated as this whole story is.
Let us, the pro-union party, dissolve a union. One of the really famous unions, full of people who would be very angry.
Yeah,
to be clear, they haven't been dissolved. They've been forced into
under administration.
Which is basically, it's like one step above dissolving. To some extent.
Yeah.
You know, I think that there's also like something we haven't talked about is that there was like thousands of various union members that were fired from their roles as part of this whole sort of situation as well.
Right.
So that's, you know, kept a lot of people upset.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not like, I'm a fan of unions. Not in general a massive fan of the CFMEU for some of the things that we've talked about on the show. Like, for exactly some of the, you know, kind of sketchiness surrounding this union in particular, or certain elements of this union. However, like, I recognize people's right to assembly, and I recognize unions are good, and I also recognize the political, like, shooting in the footness. I don't know what the word for that is. The political, let's say, calculation of attacking your union power base as a Labor leader may not be overly smart. Like, maybe there's another way to approach that. It just seems like not well thought out.
Yeah, I think even it would be much better optics to have pursued this in court instead of just doing this kind
We're going to announce an inquiry. That's all you had to do. That's all any government ever has to. You don't ever.
You just got to go to step 4. Just go straight to step 4. Announce an inquiry. You got to cooperate with the inquiry.
Passing legislation so much harder than just announcing an inquiry. You announce an inquiry, you may never need to actually have the inquiry. You can just announce the inquiry and then never speak of it again.
And I think it looks so much better for a pro-union party,
a nominally pro-union party.
Yeah, to be taking seriously allegations of corruption and pursuing them through the systems we have, rather than just doing this.
We think these allegations are serious, and anyone who's been found to be breaking the law will be punished to the utmost of the law. And we here at the Labor Party love unions, but we hate lawbreakers, and we're going to go after the lawbreakers and root them out. Yeah. In the end, and that would have been it.
Yep.
No, I think it's a better idea to spend 2 months of Australian taxpayer time in the sitting year debating this at length and ending up cooperating with the opposition who we hate.
Yeah, that too. Well, I mean, it was a mighty good...
You say tomato, I say tomato.
It was a mighty good elbow impression you did there, George, although it was leaning a little bit into Peter Dutton, I thought, kind of in the cadence and everything. So you might want to touch base with David Pocock. He's probably got some guys who could help you out there to make that spiel a bit more convincing. Yes, Senator David Pocock. Interesting guy, David Pocock. I like him, it seems so far.
Seems all right.
Yeah, seems all right. Seems like his heart and mind are in the right place, I feel. Because I did a bit of a when I saw this headline to say that which just reads, Senator David Pocock creates AI deepfakes of Anthony Albanese and Peter Dutton. And I was a bit like, no, what are you doing? Like, don't burn down the Amazon to create like fucking deepfake memes and spread misinformation to win an election. And like, no. he was doing it to highlight exactly how damn easy it is to make politicians say shit in fake videos with their scraped voices and images. And yeah, is trying to use it to push the point that we need to fucking do something about this at a legislation level.
The fact
good.
is that most Australian politicians say enough dumb shit for us to report on
100%.
already. Like it does not necessitate the need for deep fakes in order to create like news cycles about Australian politicians saying dumb shit. Like they say enough dumb shit on their own. So like,
no, I think it's more having them say not dumb, but like divisive shit.
We have Bob Catter.
Plausible
like, how much
divisive shit.
worse can it get? Like we already have it. We've got Jackie Lambie. Like we can't do worse.
Again, plausible divisive shit.
Again,
you hear Bob Catter say it, and you're like, it's Bob Catter, yeah. Crocodiles, thousand blossoms.
yeah. You let 1,000 blossoms bloom. That must be a deep fake. It's like, no, he really said that.
No, he really said it, but we know it's crazy.
Really said it.
Let's hear from David Pocock.
What I've just seen.
What I'm focused on is making a difference. And so today, following extensive consultation, I can confirm that my government will be introducing legislation into the Parliament that will see a 3-year phased-in complete ban on all forms of gambling advertising, digital and on TV, to protect the next generation of Australians.
Is that what it takes to have a Labor Party with a spine to ban gambling advertising as it needs to be an AI deepfake?
Yep.
The Jarvis version of Anthony Albanese. If you were unclear, that is fake.
Yes, Anthony Albanese did not say any of those things.
If you hear... No, and this is how you can tell a deepfake, is if you ever hear Anthony Albanese speaking with purpose and clarity and announcing a policy position that requires some kind of like intestinal fortitude, then you know it's not real. If it requires a spine and Anthony Albanese says it, you can be rest assured that it's probably a deep fake. So anyway, vote Labor next election.
So David Pocock, he essentially, I think he was a bit, vague on who he reached out to kind of help him do this. I don't think he just asked a generative AI chatbot to build this. I think he got people to kind of know what they're doing with training their face to do this with purpose, right?
Sorry, say that again. I lost you there for a second, Tom.
Okay. How Pocock did this, if I'm understanding it correctly, rather than like he didn't just ask ChatGPT or fucking Gemini or whatever they all are. Hey, make me a video of Anthony Albanese announcing a gambling ban, and that's what it pumped out. No, this is more a process of using AI and deepfakes to, like, that someone is crafting the video. You train it on specific person's audio clips and images, and
as a public figure, presumably there's like
it's got plenty to get.
It's got plenty to scrape against.
Yeah, and it's like and
you only need
touch it up a little bit yourself.
You only need like 45 minutes or something like that of audio from someone to really
capture it.
Given that there's 676 odd hours of us talking out there, I think it's pretty safe to say that our lives are going to be ruined by this. This
kind of technology. People will be
us
announcing
specifically.
me launching nukes from my lair, island on the coast of somewhere really convincingly any day now.
I was thinking they'd probably just like change your bank password, but I mean, launching nukes is also a possibility. I think Tom might have a slightly outsized view of his future level of power in the government, but
no more. I know how little I have in my bank account, so they don't need it.
So the second most credible option is nuclear war. Naturally,
it isn't for you.
No.
So David Pocock had people craft these videos just to make the point that it's quite, it's doable. You can't always trust what you see, and I found this interesting when you guys first brought this to my attention. like when you posted it up in the show list and everything. I happened to check it while I was in the airport this weekend because I was on my way back up here to Sydney. And I thought, okay, I want to watch it in probably the context that a video like this might come up. So it was on my phone screen. It's like it's in 16:9 aspect ratio, which isn't full screen resolution. I didn't have headphones in, just like come across it on my feed and play it. And yeah, surprisingly, I feel convincing in those circumstances. Like, you know, you can't quite notice that the lip sync's a bit funky, or maybe a weird kind of movement in the jowls of the face. And you know, maybe like you don't quite pick up on the audio. Like there's something about the audio that's not quite right. It sounds a little mechanical, but it's still
he
quite
sounds like Jarvis. Like Anthony Albanese.
Like I feel
his tonality and his pitch is higher slightly.
Yes.
Anthony Albanese, if he's speaking free flowing, is probably a tone down, I would say.
Whilst I think
But hang on,
Peter Dutton one is incredibly convincing.
Like 1 year from now, it's going to be twice as good, and then 1 year from now, it's going to be twice as good again.
Yeah.
And then a year later, it's going to be like 4K, a high def Peter Dutton. You know,
well, David Pocock
saying whatever.
David Pocock did say that he used a cheaper option, and that this wasn't the most expensive option available, which implies that there are better versions with better outcomes. I mean, we've seen this before.
Spring for the subscription, David. You're making a point to the Australian people. Surely this could be a work expense.
Elon Musk, for instance, is a victim of these deepfake things constantly. When I say victim, he's not a victim. People use his likeness to create victims,
to manipulate people into like that time that time we were watching. They're waiting for the SpaceX launch, and it turned into like some weird AI crypto ad.
Exactly the same thing.
Trying to scam people into buying some fake cryptocurrency.
I clicked that link because I was like, "Oh, there's the stream." Adam sent it to me.
Yeah, SpaceX are going to see some rockets
talking about crypto, and I was like, "Makes sense."
Oh, yeah.
He's a fucking idiot.
Yeah,
and then you were like, "No, that's not the." Oh shit! No, someone's hijacked the stream.
That's the thing, though. It is plausible because he is like a crypto weirdo. So it's like, people were looking at that going, "Okay." And then you're looking at it, and 1 minute in, you're going, "Okay, maybe this is the thing." And 2 minutes in, you're going, "Maybe this is the thing." And then 5 minutes in, you're going, I'm pretty sure this is a scam. Wait a minute. I'm just going to buy some Dogecoin just to be safe.
Yeah.
I mean,
the thing is, the way through your credit card number and the input, being like, wait a minute.
So Pocock's calling for a ban of AI deepfakes ahead of the election, but like,
well, without a truth in advertising law, it's pretty meaningless. If you are not required to tell the truth, why would you be required to create videos that are real? Like,
but also like, you know, even if it were illegal, it's implying that there aren't certain actors, and we'll talk about this in a sec, or groups that would just individual groups in our community that would just create these anyway, because
it's so easy. This technology is so accessible. Like I remember Sam Harris, the podcaster, talked about, and it's not his, I think it's an idea from Neil Bostrom or someone like that, talks about the idea of marbles. You got marbles in a jar, and each one of those marbles represents a new technology, right? And if it's a white marble, that is a wholly unalloyed good technology, right? You pull out a gray marble, and that's like a technology that's got some mixed benefits and, you know, negatives, something like the internet, right? Lots of benefits, but also lots of negatives, right? That'd be a gray marble. And then every now and then there's a technology in the urn that is a black marble, which is just like, this technology is an unalloyed bad. This will create bad things for society and basically no good things. And with AI, I kind of feel like we've pulled out a black marble to a certain extent. It's like, what are the good uses of this? Like, sure, it helps students cheat on their essays faster, but like, what is the actual social, like, aside from accreting billions of dollars into the hands of a bunch of, you know, megalomaniacal billionaires like Elon Musk, and, you know, like, what is the advantage? Like, we keep getting sold on the advantages to society.
What is the social utility?
What is the social utility? I'm really struggling to see the benefits of this technology. And yet the downsides, there seems to be like unlimited downsides. It's like, well, we might lose all jobs as we know it. It might become sentient and turn us all into fucking paper clips. And it's just like, why? So we can get like better Amazon product like descriptions. Like, what is the benefit of this again? Like, someone remind me.
Yeah, that's the thing I've found with it. Is like I think there are some legitimate uses for it, but they
isn't
are
it
far
annoying?
outweighed.
Isn't it
by,
annoying to draft your own emails?
Yeah, it's just far outweighed by the dangers.
It seems like it, right?
And like so much of what we've learned over the past few decades, at least. Well, I guess as soon as technology started developing further and further and further, we really struggle to catch up to technology, and we've just been lucky so far that none of those have been something this bad. But now we're there.
And Sam Harris talks about like the consumer availability of that technology also is important. Like, for example, bioengineering and generating nuclear weapons, right? These are potentially gray or black marble technologies, right? The idea that you could conduct.
Hey, Chat GPT, create me a nuke.
Well, this is the thing. It's like it's really hard to create a nuke. You need specialists, you need scientists, you need resources. A state basically needs to cohere around the project of creating nukes. What if, like AI, it's easily available and public? Like, what if you could have CRISPR gene editing, like bioweapon level technology in a 3D printer in like your average 14-year-old's house? Like the asset, like that, the graph of like the amount of people that have the ability to push their hand on a button and destroy the world, and the world gets destroyed, and the correlation between that and how quickly the world gets destroyed is like a 1-for-1 line that just goes straight up. Like, if you can imagine, there is some 14-year-old somewhere that if he can figure out how to use AI to, it's like a school shooter, but on like a massive scale. What if I can use AI to like take out a country's power grid? Like, wouldn't that be funny? And it's like, all you need is one like 14-year-old sicko who, rather than taking an AR-15, uses a piece of commercially available software and can like swing an election, or like,
uses daddy's credit card to buy to buy the subscription.
Yeah, literally. Like,
instead of FIFA points, buying a subscription to ruin a government.
The more commercially accessible these technologies are, the higher the chance of someone like completely balking our world is. And like, I feel like AI is that technology. You can't like log on to build a nuke online, but you can log on to, you can, feed into AI models. Like, a lot of disinformation stuff that's happening at the moment seems to be predicated on large language models being used to promulgate disinformation, promulgate, discord and arguments amongst people online. And like, this is a really powerful tool that like a literal teenager in his basement could use to cause a massive harm, where it's like, well, that teenager is going to have to spend his life building a nuke. Like, it's never going to happen. Right.
So, doomsday aside, do we think that in the last five sitting weeks of Parliament, that they will somehow see Pocock's message and go, we should ban that. We should definitely ban that.
Let me. I think I'll put it this way: will they? No. Could they? Yes. Because how many times have they done the thing of like, oh, it's Christmas.
Oh, we just got to jam through some legislation through Christmas. Yeah.
It's Christmas in 2 weeks. Better put through some legislation that takes away a lot of people's basic human rights because of Islamophobia.
We got to jam through some legislation because something spy stuff. Anyway, we'll see you in Jan.
Yeah, something, maybe terrorism will happen, so I guess we're frisking brown people. Push it through, Christmas next week.
Also, how does that work? It's now the start of September. How are there only 5 sitting weeks until Christmas?
Oh, because they have to go back to their hometowns and do nothing there as well.
No, that was good. I love it.
Can they fix this? Probably not. Will they fix this? Definitely not. Are they ever going to fix anything again? The answer is doubtful.
I still can't believe there's only 5. It's dumb. How are they? There should be at least like 8 to 9. I don't understand.
Get 2 weeks of leave a year. You know what I mean? Like, what are they doing the rest of the time?
It's not meant to be leave when they're back in their hometown.
It's not meant to be.
Yeah. I don't
Working
know what
at the pub. Yeah, that's wild. The other thing there, of course, that Mr. Pocock's talking about is that he's having a go at the the government's lack of spine for the full gambling ad ban, which has currently been wrestling around. Speaking of things they can't pass,
we got over that.
Gambling.
Yeah, no, I never the danger was ever assuming Labor had a spine in the first place. Like, I think you really got to let that go, David. I think we just accept less from Labor. I think that's just the lesson: is don't expect better.
There was an article in the Herald Sun this morning, and yes, I read the Herald Sun while I was at the local cafe. That was like,
he's a 10, but he reads the Herald Sun at a cafe.
I read the Herald Sun. And it was like, actually, we did a survey, well, not we, but like a group did a survey that said 56% of Australians don't want a full gambling ad ban. They just want a partial ad ban.
Okay, how many people surveyed? I'm curious about the methodology in this Herald
1,200 or something.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was some other sort of, some other.
Yeah. And also, how many of them just fucking froth a same game multi?
Yeah, we surveyed the employees down at Ladbrokes, and they reckon, fuck nah, that sucks ass, hey?
Yeah.
Speaking of sucking, the Brittany Higgins, Linday Reynolds trial.
Yeah, okay.
Sucks. It sucks. The whole situation sucks.
It really does. You saved it.
I should have just said. I should have started with the Linday Reynolds.
Yeah,
sucks, and then gone in. But yeah,
careful.
The trial sucks.
Careful, Adam. She is litigious.
Yes, she is.
I have nothing but the utmost respect for the diligent professionalism of one Linday Reynolds.
What is interesting is, I mean, with any defamation trial, you get the little tidbits out the side of it, and really some really odd, bold claims by some of the lawyers. In this case here, Linday Reynolds' lawyer, Martin Bennett, told the Perth court, and this is some stuff that I can't wrap my head around, was that it's not workplace sexual harassment because she wasn't sexually harassed, raped, allegedly, in work hours. So despite the fact that it happened inside Parliament House, because it was after hours and they went there of their own volition and they had a few frothies, it's not the government's responsibility. Which I would argue is a fucking dangerous precedent.
That is very facile. That is a facile
argument. If that's something the court wants to entertain.
Your Honour, it wasn't workplace sexual harassment. We were on a break. I was having a cigarette break. Doesn't count.
Yeah. It's during my unpaid lunch hour.
Look,
it was
no hands.
Not work time.
Doesn't count.
Fucking hell.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. You're absolutely right, Adam. The precedents that this would set, if this is not thrown out on its face, the argument is frightening. And surely, again, none of us are lawyers. There must be precedents to be like, oi. Like, I know I've seen in, contracts, for jobs that I've been in, it's always like, hey, work events, like, drinks after work count. Like, you can't just be incredibly awful and harassy to your staff, your co-workers after work drinks. Yes, work's over.
You still have to be a professional and an adult.
Yeah, this is still a work event.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if work hasn't sponsored it. If a bunch of work people decide to go to the pub, it still involves work. Unfortunately,
it's work adjacent. Yeah, no, the idea that the idea that in those workplace sexual harassment training videos, they go, "Is this sexual harassment?" They go, no, that's sexual harassment. Don't do that. Take it at the pub down the road. Then it's fine.
Absolutely wild statement from
what
that
is the possible lesson? Honestly, lawyers just say shit. I reckon they just try stuff on, man. They just
and I think that's what this is.
They just say shit.
Closing argument or some shit. I think it was in a wrap up of the lawyer trying to summarize a point of view, right? And they've just sort of slipped this in, sort of halfway through whatever they were saying.
Yeah, I don't know if slip it in is probably the phraseology that I would use.
No,
but yes.
No, probably not. No. But yeah,
my brain did not go there until you pointed that out. So thank you. I
just want to the main thing is that we hate Linday Reynolds and she sucks. I don't understand. It emerged during this trial that 21 text messages were exchanged between her and the defense attorney of Bruce Lohman during his criminal trial. And I
Seems
think
appropriate.
that seems like, without arousing the Sauron's eye of Linday Reynolds' legal team, that seems inappropriate to me. Care to comment on that, Linda, as to why you're assisting the legal defense of someone who's been accused of rape, who is in your employ, why you're even getting involved in that? That just seems not smart. She sucks. She sucks.
She did
I hate
comment
her.
on it, but she sort of fobbed it off as being sort of inconsequential from memory. Don't quote me on it. But
Very inconsequential, chatting to the legal team
Just chit-chatting. You know how you do.
of a case you're not involved
Of cases that you're
giving them advice.
You know how you constantly advise unsolicited the defense counsel of an alleged rape victim the defense counsel of the perpetrator of an alleged rape victim. That's that's just what you do. That's just normal. That's just a day's work in Parliament. It's just helping to defend alleged rapists. So it's normal, cool and normal stuff. And Linday Reynolds is great and we love her and we wish her the very worst.
We are waiting for the results of this trial, which will be interesting. But yeah,
Hey, I've got just a quick
when...
survey. Whomst amongst us thinks Linday Reynolds sucks? Just a quick show of hands. Just doing a quick Herald Sun style poll. Okay, I'm seeing a hand from Tom. I'm seeing a hand from Adam. So 100% of Australians
100% of
surveyed, 100% of Australians surveyed reckons that Linday Reynolds sucks. So I mean, that's pretty compelling evidence. I think that belongs on the front page of the Herald Sun because that's that's good solid evidence right there.
Oh yeah. And also, amazingly, still only 56% of the three of us want a full gambling ban.
How does that work?
Yeah, it's still consistent. It's crazy.
Do you want a same game multi? I've got one going right now.
I still don't know what it is.
I still
Are
don't
you
know.
betting on?
It could be. It could be anything.
Of the US election.
Yeah, it could be a same game multi. It could be literally anything, and I wouldn't know.
Yeah, wouldn't know.
Same game multi. I'm having one right now.
It could be a Mandela effect for me. Have they ever actually said it in a sports bet ad?
Is that a real thing?
Have they ever said same game multi, or have I just convinced myself
or have
that
you
that's
just
something that happens in gambling?
Mushed several terms together.
Multi, same, and I've just smashed it together. That could be possible. I am that uncertain of whatever the hell it means.
To be clear, you could have a same game multi on anything. So you could have one, for instance, on the US election results, which have been back in the news this week because Russia's at it again, guys.
Russia. They all said Russia. It's a big hoax. The Russia hoax, I call it. Well, it turns out Russia is pretty invested in helping you out, Donald. What with not just hacking Hillary Clinton's emails and then dispersing them on the web in the 2016 election, but also more recently in this massive disinformation operation that they were discovered to have perpetrated.
We've talked a lot about active measures over the last few weeks, whether that be through Facebook, Twitter.
Active measures. I tried to remember the term while we were talking. I'm like, it's some sort of measure that's active. There's a Russian term for it. I said I'm listening back to myself and I'm just screaming at the podcast. Just active measures, you fucking idiot.
Active measures indeed.
I'm like, it's like compromat. Shut up, George, you idiot.
You did say that. Yeah.
Shut
we
up.
sounded so dumb with that bit. This was a couple of weeks ago, but you can go back and listen to some of those episodes where we talked about
Please don't.
Twitter bots and other bits and pieces. No, it's interesting. And the Facebook stuff in the UK election. But this is a bit more direct. This is a bit more old-fashioned, where basically the US Department of Justice has charged 2 employees of a Russian state media company. That Russian state media company is Russia Today. Russia Today was founded several years ago to provide a Russian view on things in the US media landscape. And then they invaded Ukraine and everyone went, no more Russia Today. But that didn't stop them basically still funneling money into an intermediary company, a media company called Tenant, which is, I think, the New York Times or one of those other media outlets has revealed the name of this company, which then subcontracted to other US conservative, are you ready, guys? Conservative influencers to basically spread various narratives that I guess helped pollute the information landscape in the US and also helped promote Kremlin lines of thinking.
So
Now-
basically, the Russians looked at the ROI. They got some MBAs in a room and they said, these troll farms that we were running, pretty expensive. What if we just gave that money to some dumb American useful idiots and got them to espouse their views that they were doing anyway and just kind of amplify that rather than hiring all the... Vasily's working here. His BO is terrible. He's got a 401k. He's got dental. Okay, there's a lot of overheads in maintaining these Russian troll farms. Whereas if we just give it to Dave Rubin, he's going to say all the dumb shit that Vasily would have said anyway, and he probably doesn't have as many grammatical errors. It's much easier to just go to the source. Go directly to Tim Pool. Go directly to Benny Johnson, to the conservative idiots spreading this stuff anyway. And we're just going to give them, millions of dollars to get them to do what they're doing anyway. It's a direct cash transfer, which is a much more efficient form of welfare, as we've learned in recent years.
So basically, Russia Today, I think they're alleging, was it 10 million US dollars were funded from shell companies in Turkey, the UAE, Mauritius, and there were various fake identities involved. That money was then used to pay into tenant media, which was then used to pay these influencers. Now,
some of these influencers are making $400,000 a month to post dog shit videos that some of them were like barely viewed by anyone. They were getting editorial sway from like a billionaire that was named by
Igor someone, wasn't it?
I don't know, whatever it was, sounded shady. And they were like, we Googled him. He doesn't seem to exist. But you know what? You're about to give me like $400,000. So I'm just going to just nod and smile and say, yep, all good. Now, the allegation is that the end users, right, Dave Rubin, Benny Johnson, Tim Pool, these like major right-wing influencers didn't know what the source of the money was. But clearly what they didn't know and what they should have known are two very different things. Like random billionaires that you've never heard of and can't find on the internet probably don't just like hand out hundreds of thousands of dollars to bloggers for no particular reason. Like you should maybe know that there's something up with that. You should have thought to like maybe search a little bit deeper. But these guys,
typically, some of the videos didn't get much traction, but some of them did. And these guys, some of these, like Johnson, for instance, has nearly 2.4 million subscribers on YouTube.
Yeah, these guys are a definite, like, for real part of the right wing, like YouTube, like podcaster stan ecosystem, right? Like they for sure are. But it doesn't mean that every video, like these guys are content mills. They're pumping out stuff constantly. So just because the Russians, and there was some, from what I saw, impact on like the editorial direction of some of their videos. Like, oh, hey, we want you to repost this clip of Tucker Carlson. They didn't say it was Tucker Carlson, but a famous American journalist touring a Russian supermarket. It's like, okay, well, that's obviously Tucker Carlson. We saw the clip. We want you to repost that. And they're like, oh, do we really want to post that? That seems like maybe that's not aligned with our interest. And they're like,
it's like that's propaganda.
Yeah, that's propaganda, isn't it? And they're like, yeah, we're giving you money, so you're going to post it. And they're like, postery, sir. Like, yeah, it's so funny how obviously incredibly corrupt. Like, I know people have like, I had this a discussion with someone at my workplace about this not too long ago, where she was like, yeah, I don't trust the mainstream media. Like, I don't trust institutions. I was like, well, first of all, you work at an institution, but that's neither here nor there. But institution signs your paycheck. But it is interesting that, there has this idea that's come from the right-wing media of like, you can't trust institutions. You can't trust CNN. You can't trust the mainstream media. Like, that's all promulgated by right-wing influencers who are subject to the same corrupt influences as mainstream media, as it turns out. Like, they are just as vulnerable to, for all they're saying, oh, we're independent, you can trust us, we're your source for news, we tell it to you like it is. It's like, but if some random obscured Russian billionaire comes and lines their pockets, they're willing to say and do whatever it is. It's just like they are subject to the exact same perverse incentives as regular media. Like they are not more trustworthy.
One person that is much more, I guess, exposed to the ideological bendings of whatever rabbit hole they decide to go down. Like some of the stuff they were talking about here, like, one of them was yelling on his stream about, Ukraine is the enemy of this country and, sort of somehow tying the Democrats, this is a constant one, actually, tying the Democrats to Ukraine. That seems to be this weird conservative thing at the moment.
There was one of them was talking about like, the like the Alex Jones conspiracy, the chemicals are turning the frogs gay. Like these are like kooky weirdo guys, and they have audiences sometimes in the millions. And just because you're not mainstream media doesn't make you better than mainstream media. If anything, it makes you more vulnerable to this. It makes you worse because you're just one guy. And the New York Times, like, yes, they probably take a bunch of money from like Raytheon or whatever, or Boeing, or military contractors or whatever to advertise and sort of whitewash their various schemes and companies and make them look good. But like the New York Times, if it gets stuff factually wrong, people will turn off their subscriptions, which is a big part of their revenue. So there is an interest there in making sure that they get things right. They hire fact checkers. There's a large editorial team. And yes, biases get in there and groupthink gets into any organization. But there's other people in there. There's an edifice around them to try and hold them up to journalistic standards. And it doesn't always work, but it is certainly better than like one guy in a boardroom going, yes, I'll accept a check. You know what I mean? Like there's always more checks and balances in a large organization and institution like that, which you'll never get. You'll never get that sense of professionalism in an alternative media single person organization, which isn't to say that there aren't alternative media sources that are great, like the Klaxon, the Saturday paper here in Australia, the Conversation. There are alternate media news sources that are doing fantastic work. But you need to use your judgment. You can't just go, just because something's alternative media means it's true. You still need to read it with that critical eye and apply that kind of fact-checking rigor to the things that you're consuming online, especially if it's independent media, I think. Just because it's independent doesn't mean it's better than mainstream media.
The other thing being is like, if the New York Times gets something wrong, they're a big target and they're likely to get
someone's going to call them out on
it. Or there will be, they'll be legally required to issue a retractional.
And they do all the time.
Tom would be able to comment more on this, that there's more legal obligations.
I remember there was...
in the US, I'm not so sure, but no, in Australia, it's fairly toothless. But yeah, you can still be like mandated to post retractions or anything, but
Media Watch will come after you. That's probably the worst
Media Watch will come after you, or you'll have to post a retraction, but they can't make you post it anywhere. Like you might bury it in page 28, but the front page headline was what caused the problem in the first place. So who's going to see it?
The real consequence is that feeling of the drop in your stomach when they say they've got Paul Barry on the line and he has a couple of questions he'd like to ask you. No, and like certainly I remember there was this Tom Cotton, who was a congressperson or a senator over in the United States, posted an editorial to the New York Times a couple of years ago, advocating for bringing the American military out onto the streets. I think it was around January 6th, around that time, something like that. And the New York Times ran it. And then a bunch of people complained and said they were going to drop their subscriptions to the New York Times because this was a dog shit hot take. And the New York Times was like, hey, we're very sorry about that thing that we posted with Tom Cotton. That did not live up to our editorial standards. We're not going to do that again, right? Like there were consequences for them posting dog shit, right? Like doesn't mean things aren't going to slip through the net every once in a while. Like New York Times famously has posted a lot of institutionalist backing dog shit. But I would still trust the New York Times and the professionals that work there, rather than like Dave Rubin accepting, a bunch of money from a Russian billionaire who may or may not exist anonymously.
So the setup was interesting. So Tenet was this intermediate company, and they had their own channel, and so some of all the contracts with these various influencers were different. So some of them, they would post directly on the tenant page. Other ones, they would just obviously get the funding and maybe some, what we're unclear about, there is alleged instructions that were given. There's not heaps of detail on sort of what the communications aspect of this relationship was, but there's definitely some evidence to say, well, as George said, there were editorial points of view put forward.
Pay for play, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's, some of the narratives are all very staple ones. Basically, that Russia's war in Ukraine is justified. Various issues around, the queer, trying to sort of generate fear and
they've got a very anti-queer agenda, a very conservative
anti-queer agenda. It's all about the gender wars. You keep hearing about gender wars. The reason why you keep hearing about gender wars is not so much because, people on the left are pushing it. It's because people are pushing back against it.
Yeah, these fuckers keep complaining about it.
There's a real, anti-woke, whatever that means, a reaction against basically liberalism, where we accept people and tolerate their differences. And the conservatives are like, wow, we don't want any of that.
And part of that is pushed by
the decadent West coming to steal all our kids, right?
Yeah, and that is something that Putin has said in interviews. He talks about, institutionalized values and this kind of thing, and the strength of Russia because of those values, and that the West is somehow evil. There have been comments directly on Putin, from Putin on this front. So there's that. There's obviously the whole, the stolen election thing within the US that, obviously pollutes the discourse. And basically
incorrectly alleged stolen election.
Yes, correct. And various other things that Russia has got to that show a Russian sort of point of view, or just, sometimes it's not even about that. It's just about polluting the discourse. So as we discussed, a couple of weeks ago, all you need is for some of these videos to have 1 million views, and then that gets picked up on Twitter, and then you can use the bots on Twitter to then spin that further. Like it's a multifaceted disinformation attack. And it's not just happening in America. There are risks that this could happen here in Australia, and to some extent, we've seen this during the pandemic. We've seen it happening in the UK. We're currently in an information war with various actors around the world. So it's almost more important than ever that people are really checking and thinking critically about the sources that they're looking at. And, I think it's time that people stop hanging the institutions out to dry, that somehow, sure, the Herald Sun is run by Rupert Murdoch, but at least the Herald Sun is an organization that it's going to shoot a particular point of view, but it's not, Timmy on the internet just like us. I mean, we're doing exactly the same thing as these YouTubers, but I would argue that perhaps we're doing it with some more rigor than
and believe it or not, this is allegedly a comedy show, so it's certainly not expected of us that we have journalistic rigor. But like, I'd like to think that we take it a lot more seriously than some of these comments. There is a 0% chance that if someone offered me a check from a mysterious billionaire to reiterate some shit that I didn't believe in, like or even that I did believe in, some random guy wants you to post this thing and here's a bunch of shady money. I'd be like, absolutely fucking not. Like, what are you talking about? Yeah, I don't know. It's just, you're right, Adam, because we're going to need institutions more than ever going forward. I just really wonder, to the extent, as this AI gets better, are we even going to be able to tell? You say check your sources, check your facts, but like sources and facts, those things are mediated by institutions, and institutions are made up of people. If those people can't tell what is a real or fake video clip of Anthony Albanese or whatever, whoever's the prime minister is, if they can't tell that it's real just by looking at it, if we can't tell that it's real just by looking at it, how can anyone tell? Like, aside from like digital, forensics people that go through and validate whether a clip is real or not. Like, if it looks as good as real and it fools us and it fools the experts, like, how do we have any kind of basis for like a shared reality?
NFTs come into to fruition again, where it's like, well, it's got this, it's legit because it's got the NFT.
It's got the
Like how, like maybe that's
It's all on the
mean,
blockchain. That's how you know it's real.
You've got to start stamping things, with blockchain or unique identifiers to be able to sort of work out if it's from, an official government source, for instance, or if it's,
That actually sounds like a borderline good use of the blockchain.
You know what, Adam? A shady Russian billionaire has just jumped on the line. He's willing to offer you $400,000 to make that a reality. So,
but I really like money.
I say trust him. I do like money, and not having money is not great. So,
last thing I want to call out as well is that this whole thing we've just described, literally the plot to, I think, Homeland season 5 or 6. Like, it is literally what we've all just discussed. Homeland talked about it and was writing about it 10 years ago.
I was going to go even further back. 2001, Metal Gear Solid 2. I know Hideo Kojima makes his games about weird, like, baby ghost detectors and, like, photosynthetic babes with sniper rifles and does weird shit. But Metal Gear Solid 2, with its... Well, I'm not going to explain the plot of Metal Gear Solid 2. We'd be here all night.
We don't have time.
I don't have time.
Like, by the end of it, like the central concept is that there is like a shady group of people who are manipulating the digital dissemination of information and manipulating it to the point where we are mimetically, he was talking about memes before memes were even really a thing, mimetically spreading controlled information around to each other, manipulated for people's own political gain, and he did this before Twitter existed.
I just like it because it's a good stealth game, and you get to shoot people. You get to just shut him in the head. Got him.
Oh, George, you ask anybody, you're like, fuck, I wish when games weren't political, like Metal Gear Solid. And Bioshock. Remember back when games weren't political? Like people weren't like putting their political shit in my face.
Oh, the game about mutually assured nuclear destruction. Was that not political? That game
was the game influenced by Ayn Rand's
brand of libertarian politics. That none of that was overtly political. Yeah.
No. Yeah, the game's all about nuclear proliferation. Fuck yeah, miss when there wasn't any politics in my video games.
I just can't stand all of this like culture war, anti-woke nonsense. Like I saw this guy
I'm sick of woke as a word.
I hate it.
To be honest.
I hate it so
because it started off as like like hippies. Like I study yoga and I'm woke, and it was like funny. And then all of a sudden the right got a hold of it. And now if someone describes you as woke, it's a fucking insult. Like it's a denigrating term.
I thought the origins of woke kind of came out of black communities, kind of talking about waking up to seeing your oppressions, and like waking up to seeing seeing your oppressors.
It comes out of the Black Liberation Movement, but it's one of those things that makes its way into the popular culture as like a half. People say it like half satirically, and then you're right, like it sort of spreads out into this wider ecosystem and becomes an epithet. But like. I just like the whole. I saw this guy, a clip circulating, and I really do think the Q&A producers must just revel in people saying dumb shit, asking dumb shit questions, so they can get viral engagement on their post online. They're just like, and
we were discussing this the other day, Tom.
And you, dumb shit person, what do you have to say? And so there's this Indian guy that was. Called up to ask a question, and he was railing against anti-woke nonsense and all this sort of stuff, and how immigration, anti-immigration kind of sentiment. And I just like
there's as in he was anti-immigration himself.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
And I kind of felt like responding and saying something to the effect of like, yes, the good old times before we were woke, where we had the White Australia policy. Which meant that Rajesh never would have been able to come to this country to be like the good old times weren't so good for you, mate. They weren't so good for my ancestors. They certainly wouldn't be good for you. Like the pre-woke times weren't too crash hot, for someone who comes from, Asia.
Or at least his parents might have potentially as well.
But you know what I mean? Like this whole anti-woke, like anti-woke. It's like, well, what time are you hearkening back to?
Yeah.
Because Australia has a pretty the White Australia policy. If you haven't heard of it, Google it. It's exactly what it sounds like. We only allow white people into the country, and it was only dissolved terrifyingly recently, like within our parents' lifetimes. You know what I mean? Like that.
Yeah.
The wokeism, whatever you want to call it, social progressivism, being aware of other people and their
inclusiveness
and sensitivity is like the thing that is allowing you to get up in front of other people and espouse this dumb shit opinion. I was just like very frustrated by that whole.
Yeah. I always feel I have to ask people, like, what do you mean by woke?
What do you mean?
Using that word? Like, I mean, because heck, I'm probably not even using it right, but I always thought it meant like waking up to
being aware of systemic oppression.
Systemic oppression, and then white people have white right-wing people especially, but also white left-wing people have perverted it, but down to just being there's a woman in this video game. It's woke.
Yeah, go woke, go broke.
I see a gay person over there. That's woke.
Yeah,
it's
lost all meaning. Any acknowledgement
of something that's different, or a character in a video game or a piece of media that is outside the straight, cisgendered, white male perspective is immediately dismissed as woke. And it's like, guys, like we've been playing Lara Croft games for 20 years. Like we've been playing, you know what I mean? Like this is not the first time.
This is what the Nazis did, man. They fucking, they got shit like, they got social norms like this and they fucking converted things by just
culture.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, wokeism is just the latest iteration of another dumb. It was called political correctness when we were growing up. Yeah. You know, it's like, oh, I'm sick of this bloody political correctness. You can't say anything anymore, says white cisgendered men who have been saying anything that they fucking goddamn well please their entire lifetime and made entire radio careers out of it. Alan Jones. Like, I get very frustrated by, it's not even like a debate, because a debate suggests that there are like two equal sides opposing each other with like equally valid perspectives. And it's like, no, there's like a side which acknowledges that all people have humanity, and then there's the wrong side. Like, it's not a debate, because that's not debatable. Like, we're not arguing this anymore. We've agreed that all humans are equal and deserve equal right to human dignity. We decided that in the Renaissance. So if you're not on board with those values, then that's you being incorrect. Like, we're not engaging in a debate of co-equal ideas. You're just wrong about that. You're wrong about climate change. Like, you're just wrong. And I don't owe you the dignity of pretending that your response and your perspective is valid when it is just factually and morally and ethically incorrect.
But they have feelings, George. You don't want to hurt those feelings.
I don't care. Like, I'm sorry. If your perspective is, I do not believe all humans have a right to co-equal human dignity with other humans. Like, that's a very un-Christian perspective, by the way, probably a Christian that I'm arguing against. But it's also
Who are you arguing against?
It's my mother. I'm arguing with my mother in my head. It's just like objectively wrong. Like, even if it weren't objectively wrong, it's also morally and ethically wrong. Like, I'm just not willing to engage on the substance of the, like, it's not an argument anymore, and to engage with it on that level gives it credence.
Yeah, you can argue, what's the expression I see thrown around a lot? You can argue about pizza toppings, not human rights.
Yeah. Oh, God, that's perfect. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. On that note, we have been, we are, and we always will be Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com, where you can suggest pizza toppings. Make sure you follow us on all the bullshit social media that do, or ever will exist at Unnatural Show. That's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and mother flipping TikTok. Make sure you follow me on Twitter and Instagram at George Tsipos.
You can follow me on Twitter at Tom D. Heap.
And you can follow me down to the latest generative AI deepfake video content producing thing, where I'll be going back and collating the entire history of Unnatural Selection so I can reproduce George and Tom's likeness in my ear holes for the rest of eternity.
You'll never be alone again.
No, I'll never be alone.
I thought you were going to say to make some Anthony Albanese, Peter Dutton fanfic. That's what I was... thought that was the deep fake hole that we were going down there, but that's...
No, I just want your voices specifically, and just for my personal use.
George's voice does do a good Peter Dutton. So I mean, you're halfway there to the fanfic if you copy us.
Oh, I'm so close. Don't stop.
Jesus Christ!
Thanks for listening, guys. Love your faces. We'll see you next week.
I want to die.
Bye.